We're taking it back to 1946 on this one with Gilda, starring Rita Hayworth, Glenn Ford. Let's talk. All right. It's been a long time since I've done one of the film noir black and white situations, and I figured now was a good time. So this is Gilda, a great movie. Not sure if you've seen it. In case you haven't, it takes place in Argentina. Starring Glenn Ford is our lead. He plays Johnny, who starts out as he's a street hustler. He's a gambler. Gets picked up and he goes on this journey from street gambler to, club owner and sort of overseer of a cartel, which was once overseen by his boss. And in the middle is a woman by the name of Gilda, played by the goddess Rita Hayworth, who has mysterious past, and she's swept up in this conundrum in Argentina between Johnny, who was once a former lover of hers. They meet up again a number of years later in their current predicament, where Johnny works for the sort of crime boss dude who is now married to Gilda. And you now have an interesting series of factors at play when it comes to what happens between these two characters. Is it a love story? Maybe. Is it a love-hate story? Probably. Is it a hate story? Yes. And I mean that in the sense that it's a hate story until it's a love story, which is weird. It's a weird, probably toxic relationship, but there's something insanely romantic about it. So I'd seen this movie before a number of years ago and hadn't really paid that much attention to it. Watched it again recently, or I started to watch it, couldn't finish it, had to run off, and then I just finished it again recently this week, and oh man, it hit me in the heart. I was so moved by this movie, and I just to see the roller coaster of emotions that this film takes you on, it's really a treat. Best things about the movie, though, off the top, there's a shot between Johnny and his boss that I'll show right here. This shot, it's my favorite shot of the movie. I just think it's great. Something about the framing of it, the lighting of it, something about the fact that it's black and white, how it enhances the subtext between these two men. It just does a lot of work for me. So I really appreciate the shot. And I only recently just learned that it was my favorite shot of the movie this week. I hadn't really paid attention to it before, and I saw it this time. And also what precedes this shot, like the camera move that turns into that shot, is artful. Just cinematographer needs to get some credit because it's amazing. Fantastic work. The next thing I think is great about it, obviously, is Glenn Ford. He's a killer leading man in this movie, and I've been a fan of Glenn Ford since 1978's Superman, where he plays Jonathan Kent. If you don't know, that's him. He's Earthbound Jonathan Kent, and he's great and charismatic in the movie. He's not in there very long, but that's where I originally knew Glenn Ford from. But to see him in his younger days in these movies, I'd seen another movie that he's great in, also called The Big Heat. That's an amazing crime noir movie. If you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend that. I will. I'm going to watch that. I'm going to rewatch that. I only saw it once, like some years ago, and I was blown away by the grit and the weight that movie held. Glenn Ford is great in that movie too. So, and he's great in this. If you haven't seen The Big Heat, watch that movie. That's great. And watch this movie because he's great in this too. He's so conflicted. You see him wrestling with these emotions and you know that he's feeling something for Gilda, even though he hates her. He seems almost repulsed by her, like he's sort of disgusted by her, but he also is. She never really left his system, and it's like them meeting. He was on top of the world before she came back into his life, and then he slowly starts to unravel. Like he's like the man in charge in this movie. In a lot of ways. I mean, he has a boss, but he's like the ace. He's the boss's right hand. He has a lot of control, a lot of power. And as soon as Gilda shows up, his life immediately begins to unravel. You get to see how, without speaking, Glenn Ford displays an internal conflict and the tension within him about her, and then around her, his inner monologue, his voiceover stuff. You get to hear these things and also the different characters around him that, there's I guess he's like the laundry dude. And then there's a cop that they're all circling the area throughout the movie. They are witnessing the stuff that's happening between him and Gilda, and they speak to more of it than Johnny does. But Johnny is feeling it, and Glenn Ford plays it so well. You feel the tension building within him throughout the movie. And the more interactions he has with Gilda, the worse it gets for him. He doesn't want to be around her, and yet he still kind of loves her. And you just, that's never explicitly stated, but you feel that there's something there. He still feels something. Otherwise, why is he so angry? Why is he's just he's full of such, like heat. On the flip side, obviously the star of the show, Rita Hayworth, she is just, that entrance when we first see her pop up on screen, it's endlessly magical. We first see her when the boss is like, "Hey, Johnny, come over and meet my wife," whatever it is. And Johnny doesn't know who she is at first, but the first time you see her pop up on screen, she's out of the frame and she pops in. The way she does the hair flip, like, this is where, if you've ever wondered where the Charlie's Angels hair flip came from, I believe that spiritually, the Charlie's Angels hair flip comes from this movie. This is probably one of the most instantly iconic, majestic hair flips in cinema history, in television history, in anything visual, in action history. Gilda has the best hair flip. There are a lot of good ones out there, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of great ones. But I'm not quite sure they reach the majesty. Even with slow motion effects, anything you want to add to it to make it, to jazz it up, it's not going to be as tight as Rita Hayworth's hair flip entrance in this movie. Oh my goodness. Even if you haven't seen the movie, you likely know what this hair flip is about. And that's just the beginning. This is just when you meet her. She also plays Gilda, Rita Hayworth plays Gilda with such, she's so charismatic. And you see there's such emotion brimming beneath the surface, and you can tell she hates Johnny too. You know there's some electricity there brimming beneath the surface. But outwardly, she's so cool and she's like effortless. She glides into her room like, air. She just floats into the and all of that stuff. She's doing all these things to make Johnny jealous. She's just so calm, and but beneath the surface, she's also in turmoil. She also feels things toward Johnny. You could tell that the two of them were either really deeply in love previously, and however it went down, they separated. Whatever happened, they were separated, and they haven't really gotten over one another. You can tell that they're both affected by each other still. And it's great work. It's great work that Hayworth is doing. And she's just, she's magnetic, and you literally cannot take your eyes off of her. I couldn't. I was just, she's just mesmerizing throughout the film. And of course she has two musical numbers in this movie, and then one dance number, and they're both great. And she's, it's interesting to note, if you know anything about that time in cinema, post-war. So the Hays Code was in effect at this time. And if you don't know what the Hays Code is, the Hays Code had a lot to do with censorship a little bit. There's in terms of what types of things were supposed to could be depicted on screen. Things couldn't be overly sexual. You couldn't have things in terms of women's clothing or dress. You couldn't have sort of like the belly button exposed, things like that. The code was enforced, and even with that, they found ways. Rita Hayworth and the filmmakers, everybody in charge of making that movie go, found ways to display the sort of sensuality of Gilda. She's so, and in a lot of ways, it makes it more sexy and more hot than anything that we see today. There's not a lot of imagination and stuff that happens today. It's you see a little bit of skin, and it's sensual or whatever, and there's ways to shoot it to make it sensual. But there was something about how movies were made in the 1940s, 1930s, and 40s, where you were showing something or displaying something, getting a kind of idea across in a way that required some creativity. And in a lot of ways, it feels just like it's more sexy than anything else. You don't have to have her stripping fully naked and doing all these other things. She's so sensual, and there's barely one, I think, scene in the movie where there's a kiss. Just one. She's so smoldering. You can feel she carries such electricity, and this is without taking off any clothes. And I don't know. There's just something that's endlessly masterful about how sensuality is portrayed, particularly in this movie. This is to say nothing of the fact that Glenn Ford also is not a slouch. He's very handsome, and he's in a lot of ways he's the perfect match for Rita Hayworth. Never mind, she owns this movie. She's just like everybody goes crazy over her. She's just like and yet so she's beautiful on the surface, and she's tormented inside. And I think the same is true for Johnny. There's a lot going on in this movie. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, or if you have seen it and it's been a while, give it a watch, because it's one of those great film noir bodies of work that deserves appreciation. I may watch it again. I was so moved. By the time you get to the end, it feels like you went on this ride, and you get a sense of the history between these two characters. The other thing I appreciate about this movie is like, if Gilda was made today, there would be a lot of other details and things that would give us, more backstory to the characters. And I think that's cool, but this movie is a good example of why you don't need too much. We meet them in different stages, and we only learn about the backstory as the movie goes on. We learn different bits and pieces about their history together, but you don't know specifics. And I think that there's something really cool about not even seeing flashbacks for what they used to, how their life used to be when they were together, and all of that. I don't think we really need to do that, because the more important part is that the fact that we meet them having separated, and we get to see them do this dance with each other throughout the movie. There's this they're playing like a game of chess throughout the movie until it becomes more direct. It's quiet chess, and the two of them know what's going on, and then at some point the gloves come off, and it becomes much more in your face. And it's really cool to see that we don't to see that without so much fluff or backstory given to us. The other thing this movie doesn't do is there are not a lot of, this movie is set in Argentina, but we don't get a lot of establishing shots of the location of what Argentina looks like. There's no sweeping shots of like the mountainsides or what in fact, you very rarely get to go outside of some of the homes or the casino or the club or whatever it is. It's like maybe one or two times you get to see sort of the outside world. And there's something that's unique about that, because again, if it were made today, you would see the movie would start with like a establishing shot of Argentina, like something on the beaches or somewhere that's, a well-known place in Argentina. You get something like that would show us something. And the movie doesn't do that. It really cuts out a lot of the fat, and you get straight into the meat of the story. And then when it ends, it just ends. There's no real resolution. You don't get to see where after people disperse and leave the final scene, we don't see where people go. We don't know what that looks like, but we're to assume that hopefully things ended up nicely between people, but you don't really know. And I think there's something cool about that. The fact that we're left with something to continue to mull over. And I think that's the other thing. That's the beauty of movies that were made earlier, where as soon as the main conflict is resolved, that's it. It just credits hit, boom, boom, it's done. It's done. Movies don't do that today. It's something that for certain movies, I think it works. I think because I'm a member of a modern audience, so I do appreciate some resolution for certain things too. But I also like it. I'm so used to that now that I think it's cool to get that flavor from other movies too. And I think if more movies did that today, there's something to be said for that kind of end to a story. As soon as it ends, and you have more room to engage with it mentally. You're not given all the different things. You're not led to a conclusion that's it's easy. That's film noir and older movies in general. I think that up to probably before you get to like 1960, like the 1960s, whatever it is, late 1960s. Those movies they give you the story and then they leave you to your own devices. And Gilda is another one of those movies. So there's a ton of more I could say, a ton of more things to talk about, but I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm so pumped about this movie right now that I think I want to try to go back and watch some clips. As soon as I finish this video, I'm actually going to go and watch some scenes from it because I just now I want to see it now. So so that's going to do it for this review. If you've stuck around to the end, thank you. Come on back for some more reviews. They're on the way. But in the meantime, take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.